so very, very grateful. I just want to thank all of you for being here, and man, it's a privilege for me to be here. And our district superintendent, Steve, thank you so very, very much. And I want to talk to those of you who may be watching this, and you may be watching it live, because I'm sure there's thousands of people that are watching it live right now. Or you may be watching it later, but I want to tell you something. If you've never been here, you need to come one time. If you would come one time and bring your family, what you experience here is you can be as involved as you want to. You can have as much personal family time as you want to. There's tons of stuff to do. I promise you, if you take advantage of this week and just do it once, I promise you, your kids are going to want to come back. It is just an incredible experience. Nothing like I've experienced. A lot of times camps they feel more like a camp than they do a gathering. This is great. I feel so strongly about that the Chicago Central District, my district superintendent, I'd like to announce that we're going to pay 1 week of family camp for somebody. Now, I'd like to announce that. I can't announce that because it's not true. I haven't talked to Dr. McCain about that at all, but Dr. Larry McCain is a superintendent on the Chicago Central District. We have a website. Go there and ask him. See if he'll just help you. I am really, really grateful, and I'm grateful to all of you who have been here and been so receptive, and so let's do this, all right? I need to talk to you about Missionary Mike. Several years ago, I was pastoring in Ottawa, Illinois, and my custom was to show up early. I would get to the church about 6 o'clock, and when I, to get my mind ready, get everything ready, it's game day, we want to make sure everything's in place. And there was a guy who was kind of camped out, not totally, but he had some belongings. It was obvious that he'd kind of been at the entrance to our church for some time. And as I got within about 30 feet of him, Mike said, "Hey, are you the pastor?" And I said, "Well, what do you want?" Because that's a good thing to ask before you take the blame. And he said, "Well, I just need to talk to you about your people." And I'm like, "Okay." He said, "My name's Mike," and I told him who I was. And he said, "Your people have a problem." I said, part of me wanted to go, "Oh, I know. We have tons of problems, Mike." But I said, "Well, what's going on?" He goes, "Your people will mess with other people's stuff." I said, "Mike, what's happening?" He said, "Here's the thing. I came here last night. I was going to pray. My name is Missionary Mike. I travel, I pray, I preach, and I came here last night, and I thought I would stop and pray for your people. And then I had to go to Walmart for a few things, which was only you could see it, just walk over there. When I come back, somebody had messed with my stuff." I said, "Mike, I'm sorry that happened to you. What do you want me to do?" He goes, "Well, you need to talk to your people about messing with." I said, "You want me to call the police? Did somebody steal something?" No, but there is something you need to do." I'll talk to my people, Mike. "No, that's not it." He said, "Here's the thing. When that happened, I got so angry that I threw my favorite devotional on the roof of your church." I'm looking for cameras now. I'm thinking, yeah. I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I got angry. Do you ever get angry?" I said, "Well, sometimes." He goes, "Right. Well, tell me about a time you got angry." I said, "Mike, I don't want to talk about a time I got angry. I want to talk about why you threw your devotional. It's my favorite devotional. It's Oswald Chambers." He says, "Do you know Oswald Chambers?" I said, "Yeah, I do. That's a great devotional. My utmost for his highest. That's a great devotional." He says, "What do you like about Oswald Chambers?" I said, "Mike, I don't want to talk about Oswald Chambers. It's your devotional. It's on the roof." He said, "The least you can do is help me get it down." I'm like, "Mike, I don't know if we have a ladder long enough." He goes, "Well, let's go check." So Mike and I walked out to the barn, and I'm still wondering what is going on. They didn't say anything about this when I was preparing for ordination, not one time. So I get into the barn, we find a ladder that might be long enough, and Mike and I start walking. Have you ever walked with carrying something like a ladder that it's really important that you walk in step? Because if you don't, it could bang you on the head if the other person. Well, that was Mike. And I finally stopped about halfway. I said, "Mike, I'll carry the ladder. You just follow me." All right, so he's talking the whole time. We get over there, and I said, "Where'd you throw it?" He goes, "I think it's right up there." And so we put the ladder up, and he said, "I'll climb up." I said, "Mike, you can't climb up. If you get hurt in the church, I'm going to climb up." And so I climbed up, and it just wasn't tall enough. I could reach it, and when I was 20, I'd have done it. Not a good idea at that point in time. And so he said, "Well, jump." I said, Mike and I are having conversation full blown. I said, "Mike, I'm not going to jump. It could fall." Now listen, here's what I want you to do, Mike. I want you to come to church. We're going to have donuts and coffee in a little bit. You hang out, and when it's over, we'll get a bigger ladder. We'll find somebody to help us get that devotional off the church. We don't want to leave Oswald Chambers on the roof. And so he said, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm a busy man. I got to go on. There's other places I need to pray. I said, well, Mike, I think I may have a copy of that in the office. Would you like me to get it for you? He said, no. That's my copy. I'll come back and get it at some point in time. And he said, I just need you to know that you need to have a talk with your people about messing with other people's stuff. I said, Mike, seriously, we need to have a talk about your anger. And he said, not today. I'm too busy. And so he went off, and I couldn't help myself after church. I got a couple guys, and I went up, and there was Oswald Chambers on the roof. He had thrown that, and somewhere, if I'd have found it, I'd have brought it here today. I haven't thought about that day for a long time until a couple times in the last couple years when I was tempted to throw Oswald Chambers on the roof. Just one of those days, right? Folks, the component today for me is probably one of the most important components of us being able to turn everything that's going on around us in our culture around. If we are going to go as the Father has sent us, if we're going to be sent like Jesus was, led by the Holy Spirit, carrying a towel and ultimately a cross, with a message to deliver, if we're going to ring true with these 4 statements that are gospel true and door opening, then there's something that we need to remember. I'm challenging you to make this a mission of the moment for the next few months. I'm not hard to find, First Nazarene, our website there, or if you just Google my name, brianwangler.com, or you can bwangler5@gmail.com. But if you sign on and you begin to do this, I would love to hear, if you're going to stay focused, but here's the thing. Here's what I learned from Missionary Mike. It's hard to stay focused sometimes. It's difficult sometimes. Matter of fact, in 2000, before the digital revolution, which is kind of a big revolution, in 2000, scientists told us that our attention span was 12 seconds. To put things in perspective, a goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. Now, they say that our attention span is 8 seconds. We are losing to goldfish in our ability to stay focused. And it's going to mean that we're going to have to come to a place where we move forward in grit and grace. I am really disappointed. I forgot when I brought this over. I had a special font for grit. It was Frankenstein font. And it just was just dripping. I mean, it was just, I'm talking about grit. We talk a lot about grace. We don't talk about grit. Grit is something probably pretty close. It's got to do with our faith, but it's that peace that just won't be moved. It's that peace that outside of the Holy Spirit makes us a stubborn person, makes us an awful person. But inside the work of the Holy Spirit, we keep showing up. Inside the work of the Holy Spirit, we will look down the problem instead of allowing the problem to look down us. Grit. In psychology, grit is a positive, non-cognitive trait based, I love that, non-cognitive. I'm good at those. Non-cognitive trait based on an individual's perseverance of effort combined with a passion for a particular long-term goal or end state. A powerful motivation to achieve an objective. Sometimes you just got to hold on. I think of grit. I think of the 3 Hebrew children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they're told, if you don't bow down, this is what's going to happen. And they say, listen, O king, we're not afraid. We're not afraid of you. And even if you do what you're saying you do, we're not going to bow down. That's grit. Grit is continuing to show up. Grit is continuing to participate. Grit, that's the definition of grit. This is my granddaughter, Chloe. And a few years ago, she went with her dad to the park, and they had those rings that you climb on like that, and she got on it, and she fell, and she had to go to the doctor and get stitches in her head, and my son sent that picture to my wife and I, and Lindy's like, Nick, what what's going on? Why you can't let her go do that? I'm like, yeah, Nick, yeah, And then he sent me another picture. When they got out of the hospital, they went for ice cream. And he said, where else do you want to go? She said, I want to go back to the rings. Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, that's my girl right there. That's what grit is. And listen, you're going to stumble, you're going to fall, there's going to be difficulties. If God's put something in your heart, somebody expressed maybe a call to ministry this week, or if God's put an idea in your heart, the question is not whether you're going to fall. The question is not whether you're going to need stitches. The question is not whether it's going to get tough. The question is, what are you going to do then? I remember as a young man, my brother was trying to teach me to water ski. We had a little boat. We're in the middle of Illinois. There's only like one pond in the state, I think, or something. There's not much water. And so he swam back to me, and I'm there, and he said, Brian, here's what's going to happen. I said, Bill, what if I can't get up? He goes, oh, you won't get up the first time. I said, well, when I get up, what if I fall? He goes, oh, you're going to fall. I'm driving the boat. You're going to fall. He said, but you've got a life jacket on. You'll be fine. You will be fine. Now listen, if you answer the call of God, the battle is already won. But we have to seize it. We have to stick around long enough. And there's a component that I don't know what else to call except grit that will cause it. This is a recent picture. I have no idea what she's writing. She's just starting the 3rd grade. What could she possibly be writing? I don't know, but I'm pretty excited about it right now because there's grit behind it. Positive, not just a trait. Sometimes we just got to hold on. Sometimes we just got to toughen up. Grit and grace. And let me show you some grit, all right, and grace. The Apostle Paul, 2 Timothy. Whenever you read 2 Timothy, years ago I heard Chuck Swindoll talk about Paul and 2 Timothy, and there's some writings on it, and it was just great. He told me in that, he didn't tell me personally, he said it to millions of people, but I happened to be in the audience. He said, whenever you think of 2 Timothy, I want you to think dungeon. Mamertine prison in Rome. This was where people went before they died or to die. It was a hole in the ground. You can research it online. And so this is it. And he's writing a letter, probably dictating up through a hole in the ground. You know that everyone in the province of Asia has deserted me, including Phygelus and Hermogenes. May the Lord show mercy to the household of Onesiphorus. Who's that guy? Because he often refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chains. On the contrary, when he was in Rome, he searched hard for me. And then there are the words. Until he found me. There were 1 million people in Rome at that time. How would you ever find somebody? Onesiphorus, where are you going? I'm going to go find Paul. Where's he at? Well, he's in prison. He might be in Mamertine. I don't know. How are you going to find him? I'm going to search. How long are you going to be gone? Until I find him. Oh, that God would give us a little bit of that. That would say, hey, this isn't working the way I thought it was going to. We're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to change a little bit. We're going to have to rethink some of this, but we're not quitting until we find him. I'm here today because there were a few people at Southside Church of the Nazarene who decided they were going to pray for me until the Lord found me. They were going to keep seeking me and reaching out to me. Every few years I get calls from people, Brian Dale, how are you doing? We're hoping you come back to church. That's the kind of commitment. If we're going to be a messenger, we're going to have to get over this idea that it didn't happen in 6 weeks or it didn't happen in 6 months. We're just going to do it until we find them. Your children are worth that. Your grandchildren are worth that. That's grit. Until he found me. Grit and grace. Here's the verse. This is why we got to have grit. Let us not become weary in doing good. If you've talked about doing good, you don't know what that weary is. But if you've ever put your neck out, if you've ever stepped forward and answered the call and said, I'll do it, I don't care what it is. Some kind of evangelism, sure. But even to put together a camp like this, if you've ever done that, you know what it is to get weary. Because it is always, it seems like it takes longer, costs more, there's more to it. We always expect some kind of a hallelujah chorus when we step out. people will go, yay, and then that's the last you ever see of them. And we must not become weary in doing good. For at the proper time, we will reap a harvest. If. That's an if. That's not just because you showed up. We do not get participation trophies. We don't. If we do not give up. Over the years, I have given up a whole bunch of times, especially on a Monday, when it's like in my heart, in my spirit, I don't think I can, something must be wrong. And I think the issue sometimes between those who kind of stay at it and those who will say, well, that didn't work, now go try something else. I think the issue really is weariness and grit. And I'd like to put some grit. You know how if you walk on sand, you can't hardly walk on sand without getting sand in your shoes? I want to be the grit in your shoe for the next few months. That will just, and so I want to help you as the Lord's helped me. This is how he's helped me with regard to this weariness. First of all, to combat that weariness, remember why you're running. Remember why you're doing what you're doing. Pastor, you're not doing this for a paycheck. If you're doing this for a paycheck, you've made some really bad decisions in your life. Now, I'm not even talking spiritually. I'm just talking about, really? There's this career path does not lead. That's not why you're doing it. A lay leader who's given your time and you've given money and you've given service and every once in a while you just begin to wonder, man, I'm just tired. Well, remember why you're doing what you're doing. You're running because somebody ran for you. And you should make a list. I do that every once in a while. Why am I doing this? Make a list. Why are you running? There's a lot of, right? There's lots of graceful reasons. Somebody ran for you, right? Somebody provided for you. Most of us didn't build the buildings that we worship in. Somebody else did. Somebody was patient. Somebody was kind. Jesus, right? We can come up with all of those. Let me give you a unique one that I discovered last year. I'd never noticed this. I'm not a big connoisseur of art, but this is Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. And you've seen this picture around. I mean, it's been places. But I learned something about it that I didn't know. Van Gogh was known for significantly working with light. And if I could get it dark in here, you will notice that there's light everywhere. There's light in the sky. There's light in the city, except for one building in the painting. The church. Isn't that interesting? Van Gogh was born in the lineage of Dutch Reformed pastors, and he trained for and desired to become a pastor. But the church rejected his plea. They said, "No, you're not pastoral material." So instead, he opted to work as an evangelist to the poor. Among the poor, he lived with them in a Franciscan devotion, living in squalid conditions, and made an appeal again. The church authorities who sent him there were appalled by the conditions he chose to live in and rejected him again. And this was the phrase. They said he was, quote, unfit for the dignity of the priesthood, or quote, unquote. He spoke 5 languages, wrote fluently in 3. At some point in time, he just gave up. And the lights went out in the sanctuary. That's why you're running. Because those lights need to be on. Those lights need to be on. Somebody who has felt rejected, and there may have been very good reasons. We know he had some mental illness issues, and so very, very likely there were some reasons why he wasn't going to be able to do exactly what he thought he was going to do. But but if there had been somebody who had been able to help him to keep the lights on. You're running because Jesus is the light of the world. He's it. This is it. This is where the light's going to come from. And whoever follows him will never walk in darkness. So remember why you're running. Secondly, don't run alone. Don't run alone. Over the years, I've seen some of the most talented, gifted people who have had a call to ministry, but they didn't really like being part of a thing. They didn't really want to submit to any authority that was around them. And they kind of wanted to be their own thing and do their own thing. And over the years, I watched them. They'll get out there, and they don't fit here, and I'm going to try it over here, instead of just saying, hey, the Lord's called me here. Tell me how I can run forward and do ministry and be involved. It has to, even in the local church, when we ask folks to kind of follow a process and to engage in a process and to go through membership, and there's always very gifted, talented people that go, I'm going to go out there. And at the end of the day, it's pride. At the end of the day, it's stuff that we all have dealt with. But don't run alone. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Oh, that we can connect. We're talking about connecting outside the church. Oh, that we can connect inside the church. Oh, that we can have the eyes to see people around us and to recognize and be able to read what's going on and know when they need a touch. Don't run alone. Get into a Sunday school class. Get into life group. If you're watching online, get in. You've got to connect. Roots need to be put down. And if not in this church, then some church. But don't run alone. There's a word for people who just determine to run alone. It's victim. I mean, that's not how Christ designed us. I mean, from the very beginning, God said of Adam, it's not good for him to be alone. And it's not good for believers to be alone. And it's work. Because it's easier just to do your own thing. But at some point in time, we have to have each other in community. Here's a little bit of grit with regard to that. This is one of my favorite stories in the Bible. So, the Israelites are stuck, and Saul's got 600 soldiers, but they're stuck, and there's a divide, and they can't figure out what to do, and Saul's not going forward. And on one cliff stood to the north of Michmash, and the other to the south of Geba. And Jonathan said to his young arm, so here's young Jonathan, right? He's like, Dad, we got to go do something. I'm making this up, but I'm thinking it could have happened. Dad, we got to go do something. I'm not going to do anything. We can't cross that. Come on. No. Jonathan's walking around there. He said to his young armor bearer, come, let's go over to the outposts of those uncircumcised men. Perhaps, I like that kind of zeal, perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or few. His armor bearer said, do all that you have in mind. Go ahead. I am with you, heart and soul. I wish we had somebody at the piano playing that little ding, ding, ding. Ding, 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 ding. You folks are all too young. Heart and soul. We need to come alongside each other and say, hey, I'm with you. You're not running alone. I'm going to run with you. Heart and soul. Not if I can make it. Not if maybe I'll be there. I'm in heart and soul. I'm in because I believe in you. I'm in because you're valuable. I'm in because you're valuable to me. You're valuable to God, and I can tell. Oh, that God would give us, do that for each other. Oh, that we could do that for our pastors. Even, I've had people who committed to go with me, heart and soul, when they weren't sure we weren't going to run right off the edge of a cliff, but they're like, all right, this is what we're going to do. Don't run alone. It will wear you out quicker than anything. Here's another thing I learned. Know where your help comes from. Know the well that you need to drink from. Be careful when you're weary about hanging out with a whole bunch of other folks who are weary. Because sometimes we choose the wrong wells to drink from. Do you not know, have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths go tired and weary. It don't take years for this weariness to hit you. I mean, it doesn't. You decide you're going to communicate, and you're going back to school this fall, and you say, oh, I'm going to do this, and then it just gets tough, but the longer times go, the longer that you're at it, you'll be surprised by how the weariness will just suddenly sit in on you. And it'll be like, I was doing fine, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, know where your help comes from. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Know where your help comes from. I think that in my personal journey, what I'm about to tell you is absolutely true. And anecdotally, it's what I've watched over the years. Inevitably, when somebody falls under the weight, you'll find out that there was a time when they stopped that one-on-one time with Jesus. And we call it a devotional life. We used to use a phrase when I was a kid. They used to say, "Have you done your devotions?" And I can remember, oh yeah, I'll go do. And I felt like the Lord at one point in time said, "Do your devotions? That's what we're doing. We're doing it, as opposed to." And listen, your pastor, there are folks around you. If you struggle with that, and I did, there are ways to develop that, but know that ultimately, I can't be the source of your hope. That's got to come from Jesus. If you hear from me, you're going to make it. That fuels me when somebody says something nice to me like that. That helps me a little bit. But it only gets me 15, 20 yards down the road. But when you have a moment when His Spirit testifies with your spirit that you're His, and He affirms that call, oh, you're ready. Know where your help comes from. Run the race and the pace set for you. Therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. I was listening to Scott Rainey the other day. I'm like, man, I wish I could be like 25% of him. First of all, just remember all the things that he remembers and taking advantage, and he's uniquely gifted, and I am so glad that he is, because we're learning so much from him. But I've learned that when I be around other pastors, there's always somebody who's like going faster, farther, and they're trying to help me, and they do help me, and I'm grateful for them. But every time, so many of my friends will get on an airplane and win the whole airplane to Jesus by the time it lands, and that's not, and my church hasn't grown like that. And sometimes that'll be weariness, because you'll start doing comparison, and it's comparing yourself to others only leads to two things. One is pride, doing better than them. The other is discouragement. I could never be them. Seth Godin talks about how a business writer. He talks about business leaders and you trying to go too fast. Too far, too fast, and he says that dye that they put in, that ink that they'll put on money, so that if it's stolen, the little thing blows up. If you take one drop of that and drop it into a swimming pool, it will literally color the whole pool. But you drop it into the ocean, doesn't change anything. Focus on swimming pools. As you think about how God is leading you and the difference that you want to make in the world, it'll get real discouraging if you try to, but the Lord's going to give you a person, a name, a situation He's calling you into, and just allow God to speak. Run the pace and the race set for you. There have been times when I've been at it, and I'm like, "Lord, this isn't working," and He goes, "Yeah, I know." I'm like, "Well, why isn't it working?" He goes, "Because I didn't tell you to go do that." I'm like, "Oh." I said it right from the very beginning. But if you're a Christ follower today and you're giving yourself to His service, whether you're home because you're sick or and watching online or just tuning in or you're in the house, if you've given your heart to Christ, you say, I'm trying. You are where you are by divine appointment. I promise you. God may move you someplace else next week or next month. But today you are where you are by divine appointment. Run the race He's laid out for you. Consequently, I can't say the first without saying the second, and that is you're doing better than you think you are. There are things that are happening with what you have given to the church, with what you have done, I wish I could just take the whole day and tell you stories of people who have come to the church and said, you know what, Pastor, I haven't been here for several years, but I still remember the first time I came, there was this person who greeted me, and this is what they said, and so I've never been able to get over it, and finally I'm coming back. Just run the race and the pace set for you. Then, remember who sent you, all right? And remember whose you are. Those nail-scarred hands, Jesus knew the disciples. He knew Peter. He knew you when he sent you. It's not like he's going, well, that's a surprise. I thought they'd go faster, right? He knows you. He's seen every tear you've ever cried. Saw the first tear you ever cried, and every one. He knows what you're good at. He knows when you're going to stumble. He knows what the thorn in your side is. He knows you. And let's remember that, everybody has their favorite depiction or picture of Jesus. And a lot of times it's kneeling at the rock, right? In the Gethsemane or something. Hey, here's one of my favorites. Just remember. On one hand, I say, remember who sent you. He loves you. On the other hand, I'll go, remember who sent you. This is my grit moment. I saw heaven standing open, and there before me was a white horse whose rider is called Faithful and True. In the 80s, we said that's bad right there. With justice, he judges and wages war. His eyes are like blazing fire, and on his head are many crowns. He has a name written on him that no one knows but himself. He is dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is the Word of God. The armies of heaven were following him, riding on white horses and dressed in fine linen, white and clean. Coming out of his mouth is a sharp sword with which to strike down the nations. He will rule them with an iron scepter. He treads the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh and on his name is written King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Every once in a while, we need to look the enemy in the eye and remind him, you remember who sent me? You were sent. You were sent by not only a Savior, but the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. You were also sent by the one who loves you more, knows you best, and loves you most. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. There's an old song I'm not going to sing, from the 80s or 70s or something. The title of it is, You'll Always Be a Child in My Eyes. You are a beloved child of God. So, remember who sent you. So, I don't know how familiar you are with Bob Goff. I recommend him as a family camp speaker. If you can get him, we'll need to raise the offerings a little bit probably. He's an interesting guy. If you haven't picked up any of his stuff, he's a believer who just does crazy things. He became an ambassador out of the United States, has helped rescue children in Africa that were sold into slavery. He's got lots of books, and you should check him out. He will encourage you. Right before COVID, I had a chance to hear him speak. And he told a story about when his first daughter, Lindsay, was born. His wife had had a difficult pregnancy. He said she was in a bad mood going into the delivery. And he said, things got tough, and he said she said some really mean things to me while, all that process was going on. And finally she said, just get out. Just leave me alone for a minute, right? And so he's like, okay. And you'd have to know Bob Goff, but he's like, okay. And he went out and I need to do something constructive. And so he wrote a note to the child that was being born. And he rolled it up and put it in his pocket. He went back in the room, and Lindsay was born, and, all was right with the world. And 18 years later, when he got home from the hospital, he took that note, and he found, like, one of those jars, like you would can stuff in, a little one, and he put the note in the jar, and he buried it in the backyard. It's Bob Goff. If you read him, he's crazy. 18 years later, he heard the car pull up. Lindsay and her mom got out. Lindsay was crying. She come in the house, and she said, Dad, I wrecked the car. And he said, You're okay? Yeah, I'm okay, but I wrecked a car. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to wreck the car. I know, and it was a brand new car, and it was his favorite car. And Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He says, come with me. He went in the garage. He said, handed her a shovel. And he said, right out under that tree, I'm going to point you where to go. I want you to dig something up. She's like, Dad, are we going to bury me? Is this it? Am I going to die now? She walked over. She put the shovel on the ground, and it hit glass. She dug up that jar. And she opened up the note. And among a few other things that he had written on the day she was born was the phrase, I forgive you for wrecking my car. She said, Dad, you forgave me for wrecking the car before I was even born. Yeah, you're going to wreck the car. But you are a beloved child of God. And folks, you have everything you need to go out of here and go back into a world that's full of so much anxiety and be a non-anxious presence that reminds the right person at the right time in the right way you're valuable. You matter to me, and I'm here. You matter to God. And I don't know how we're going to get through it. I don't know how it's all going to work out, but I promise you there's a way. You are sent. I'd like the band to come back up. I'm going to pray, and then the band will play a song. Our band will play a song. I love these guys. And then our DS will come and close the camp. Lord, thank you for these folks. Thank you for your grace and your mercy that has brought us all together. And Lord, I made a joke about this up front, but I really am praying for somebody who may be listening to this or watching it later, that they would take seriously the opportunity of spending a week here. This could change a family forever. This could bring much needed rest to somebody who is working so hard. And so I pray for next year. I pray, Lord, that you would, even now, that among the other things I'm asking you to do, that you would just light a fire. Because this is an amazing opportunity. And I say that because I've experienced it and I've been blessed by it. I ask for your continued guidance and for your continued grace, and that you would help us to be people of grit and grace. And if there's someone here or someone watching who needs to start out or start over with you, I thank you for the promise of your word, 1 John 1:9. If we confess our sins, you're faithful and just to forgive us. So, Father, where there's healing, where there's forgiveness, it's all available right here. You took care of everything that we need right now before we were ever born. And we thank you. Amen.